Welcome back to another week of the wonderful world of dodgy movies with me, movie and TV Mistress. This week we have a Jeff Bridges film for our Jeff month. So, as you can see, I watched the 1976 King Kong. Never heard of it? That's okay. Most people probably know of the 1933 King Kong, which is black and white, stop motion, classic Universal movie, and the Peter Jackson 2005 overlong bore fest that is Peter Jackson's King Kong from 2005. So that tells you how I feel about King Kong from 2005. To be honest, I have never seen the original 1933 King Kong. I am aware of it, I've seen all the famous clips, I knew the last line of the movie, so it's very famous for that. And I liked Peter Jackson at the start. So I did see the 2005 King Kong at the cinema, and as soon as the famous last line was said by Jack Black of "Was Beauty That Killed the Beast," my jacket was on and I was out the door. I was pissed. So my tolerance for King Kong films probably has fallen, because I grew up watching King Kong Lives in the 80s with Linda Hamilton and a crazy surgery with giant, surgical tools and a giant robotic heart and some weird stuff. So I have a very low bar for what I expect from a King Kong film.
It is 1976. The American merchant vessel Petrox Explorer has just set sail from the port of Surabaya in search of oil. What they find will shock the world.
We may be sailing into the history books.
She's alive!
Maybe my luck has changed.
They will discover an uncharted island that is the home of the most incredible creature on the face of the earth. A creature called Kong. Dino De Laurentiis presents the most exciting original motion picture event of all time. King Kong. King Kong, a fantastic adventure. Open the gate! King Kong. King Kong, unlike anything you've ever experienced before. With Jeff Bridges, Charles Grodin, and introducing Jessica Lange as the beauty who charmed the beast. And starring the eighth wonder of the world, King Kong.
So, the plot of this 1976 King Kong is similar but not the same as the original. Instead of a film crew going off to film a crazy film on an island somewhere, which makes no sense, they decide that the plot of this one will be a petroleum company called Petrox. Yes, you heard that name right. Petrox, as in the trend and fad that was of the 70s to have a rock as a pet. Because they're pets. Anyway, this petroleum company has a member of the board, played by Charles Grodin, who is overacting galore in this, but looks like he's having fun. And he has decided to go and explore a cloud bank, which he believes is covering an island in the middle of the Pacific, I believe. And go and find oil, because he thinks the next big oil will be there. And he brings along a whole load of crew. The real ones that you only ever really see in this film are René Aubergenois, who is there to analyse the oil that they find, the pilot of the boat, Charles Grodin overacting, Jeff Bridges stowed away, and they find Jessica Lange in a raft after the ship or yacht she was on crashed and everyone died. She says the funniest line, and it's just bizarre really when you think about it. She goes, "A movie saved my life." And they go, "How do you figure that?" They were all watching a movie and I didn't want to watch it. I don't want to watch a movie called Deep Throat. Random reference to a porno for no reason. It's a bit random that in a Kong movie there would be a reference to a very hardcore porn film. And does this mean that she was going to work in the porn industry? Which could explain why she's not that bothered about possibly being touched up by an ape. Her role is that she is still playing an actress, like Anne Darrow of the original and remakes. She chooses to be going by the name Dawn, because she'll be a star by dawn? I don't know. I wish it was Dead by Dawn. I just love Evil Dead. Anyway, so she's describing later on about what happened. She was on this ship with the director. They're going to go film something. So their plot is kind of following the original King Kong plot, but we're on a different boat. And that boat crashes and they're all killed. They don't make it to the island. Anyway, so the story follows on after that. They get to the island, they go explore, they upset the locals. Dawn gets taken by the locals and married off as Jeff Bridges, who has never been to this island before, doesn't know anything about the customs or the locals, but gets it from the fact that there's a girl sitting on a thing and a black guy from the tribe dressed up as a gorilla, that she's a bride and he's the stand-in for the groom, and he's figured out that the groom is a giant gorilla before even seeing said giant gorilla. Don't know how he knows, other than he read the script. But that's, interesting. So she gets kidnapped and married off to Kong. We get the famous scene, she screams, she gets picked up by Kong, and then there's a whole load of stuff. None of the things that you saw in the 2005 Kong film, if you actually sat through it like I did, happen. We don't have a dinosaur attack. We don't have giant slugs. We do get a giant snake towards the end on the island, and Kong rips that snake's jaw apart. Possibly a reference to the dinosaurs, and maybe they thought the dinosaurs were a bit too far for a giant ape movie. We're on an island that nobody's seen for years. Who cares if it's realistic or not? Do we really need to say, oh, no, giant gorillas are fine. No, we can't have dinosaurs in this movie. Seriously? Anyway, meanwhile, Jessica Lange seems to be getting very turned on every time she's around Kong. And it's like he's oozing pheromones and she's like really into it. I get it, at the start she was stoned when they tied her up, but later on, after she's been washed and dived in some water, and he's picked her up again, and then he's fingered her body and stripped her with one finger. Seriously. Giant finger stroking her up and down. They even reference the fact that an ape tried to rape her. She has no problem with this, and I think in all three versions of it, maybe the Anne Darrow character has Stockholm Syndrome when it comes to King Kong. Anyway, so they get to New York. There's a giant animatronic Kong chained up, right? He has a crown on his head and is revealed by lifting a giant petrol tank off him. He gets pissed, as Kong does in every movie, because Anne's, or Dawn in this case, is getting pushed about. So he goes nuts, and then he chases after her around New York City, destroying things, pushing people over, stepping on things, you know, typical things. Stuff that I'd seen and experienced when I went on the Kong ride when it was called Kongfrontation at Universal Studios back in 2001. So, yeah, shaky, shaky, shaky of an elevated train. And then we get the one scene that has always bothered me. Because this is right towards the end. Oh no, we're going to have to climb a tall building. And instead of climbing the Empire State, which apparently caused a lot of controversy with people who worked at the Empire State, who then protested and dressed up as gorillas, they didn't go and climb the Empire State. They decided to climb the Twin Towers. Oh, and he jumps across them at one point. So he's on top of one, and then he goes and jumps to the other because they're shooting him on this one, so he jumps to that one. But before he climbs it, now Rick Baker did the costume for Kong, and as far as I understand it, he was in said costume. The rest of the movie, I'm okay with the way that Kong walks, because you don't see his lower torso. You see the upper half, you see the hands, you see the face. You get the odd glimpse of him running through, but the legs would be covered by the forest. No, we get full-on Kong walking towards the Twin Towers. And he doesn't walk, he swaggers. He swaggers up to the Twin Towers. It's kind of like a western walk, maybe like John Wayne, bow-legged. It's it just looks weird, and I'm like going. So at least with Andy Serkis, he actually tries to act like an ape and walk like an ape, even though you don't actually see him. It's just motion capture. That's fine. Rick Baker, I don't feel like he tried. There is good emotion in the face of Kong. The only problem with the special effects comes when you can actually spot the animatronic Kong, which is chained up. For close-ups, of course, it's Rick Baker in makeup, as in the costume. But they actually did build a giant Kong, and it was chained up in the cage with a crown on it. And it looks weird and awkward when you see it, and it stands out a mile. I know these special effects were probably amazing back in '76, but they do stand out, as does all the blue screen work. But that's true of any movie of the '70s, which is why there was a game show in the '80s with Philip Schofield that had lots of blue screen stuff that just looked weird for kids. Jeff Bridges is a good actor. He plays with the role, but it feels like he's unnecessary. He's there to give some backstory at the start. He stows away on the ship, gives some backstory about how this island keeps coming up in different historical texts. Mentions the fact that at one point, I think in the 1800s, it was referred to as the Island of Skull. So that's the closest we get to a reference of Skull Island. We don't see a giant skull in this, which I know is a big deal. You see a giant gorilla skull at some point. We don't. Once they scare off the locals on the island, we never see the locals again, and I don't know why, or how they get rid of them. It's just they do after they marry off Dawn to Kong. That's the last time we see the tribes people. They're just gone after that. Rene Auberginois is hilarious and just looks like he's having fun. Charles Grodin is over the top and again is having fun. And this is introducing Jessica Lange. And Jessica Lange, it feels like she's trying to do 1933 and Darrow and trying too hard. And it disturbs me how turned on she is by Kong. So whenever he blows on her, yes, he gives her a blowjob. No. So he lets her wash off because she gets covered in muck when she runs away from him. So he puts her under a waterfall with his hand, and then he lets her into the water to wash off completely, and then picks her up and then blows on her for like ages. And she seems really turned on by that. I mean, she's fully clothed at this point. There's no sex, but he's just blowing on her, and she's like, it's disturbing. So, Jessica Lange's weird. Jeff Bridges just feels like by the end of the movie, I feel like he's just like, what am I doing here? So, Dino De Laurentiis group decided to make this film. Dino De Laurentiis famously has said that at the end of Jaws, which was a year earlier, they all cheered for the death of Jaws. And he said, at the end of my movie, they will cry for the ape. I didn't cry. I never cried for the ape in the Peter Jackson one either. I was, as I said, out the door as soon as the line was said. I didn't care. If any ape movie has made me care, it would be Planet of the Apes. Probably Conquest for Planet of the Apes. Or no, Battle for Planet of the Apes. That was good too. That made me sad. Yeah, and then I did find Mighty Joe Young quite sad. But King Kong, he can take care of his own, and he stands there and takes it like a man when he realizes he has no way of defeating the bullets and copters that are circling him around the Twin Towers. Okay, so Dino De Laurentiis group, and Dino De Laurentiis wanted to make this movie. Clearly it was made for money. Universal were going to make this movie, were going to make a King Kong movie, and they were going to do, back in the 70s, a proper remake period piece. But when Dino De Laurentiis group decided to make theirs, they stopped production of theirs. But I think some of the stuff that appeared in this film may have influenced their confrontation ride that they opened at Universal Studios LA and in Florida, which is sadly gone, but is kind of back in a 3D format as Skull Island. Kong of Skull Island? Yeah. Which is quite good, and again has him fighting dinosaurs. So Dino De Laurentiis, you should have let the dinosaurs remain in the film, because I always enjoyed seeing King Kong take on a T-Rex. It's better than King Kong taking on Godzilla, because that made no sense. Godzilla can shoot fire out of his mouth and laser beams and stuff. He can defeat dinosaurs. He can't defeat Godzilla. But that's going on to another monster movie. So this month I've been dealing with Jeffs, so this is why I chose this film. It's a bit of a random one from Jeff Bridges. I could have chosen Tron, but I love Tron, and yeah, I know it's dodgy. I know a lot of people think it. I know it's dodgy, but Tron Legacy is probably worse. I could have chosen a load of other films like Heaven's Gate, but Heaven's Gate is so long, I just don't think I could sit through that. And I felt that this was probably the weirdest one of his on his list of films. Charles Grodin just makes me laugh anytime he's on screen. I don't think I've ever seen him do something serious. And I just feel like Dino De Laurentiis did it for the money, the same way that he did it with Superman 4. He didn't care about the film. He just wanted the money. He wanted the box office. And perhaps he succeeded at times, but at other times he didn't. And if it wasn't for Dino De Laurentiis, we wouldn't have had Evil Dead. So it swings and roundabouts with him. I feel like Dino De Laurentiis group is kind of the upmarket version of Troma. They have their hits and they have their misses. Would I recommend King Kong 1976? For a laugh and to see a giant ape swagger and climb the Twin Towers? Definitely. The sad thing is that they had to, that they felt they had to, in 2001 after September 11th, pull all copies of King Kong 1976 and change the artwork because the original artwork has Kong on top of or straddling the Twin Towers and having planes circle him. Because, you know, I understand that nobody knew how to handle what happened in September 11th. So films had things cut, endings were changed, like the ending of Men in Black 2, and anytime the Twin Towers were shown in some movies that came out that year, they went back and digitally removed them. Now, I feel that's kind of disrespectful to all the people that were in the Twin Towers, that worked there, that built it, that, you know, it was part of history. Removing it from a film because you didn't know how to deal with it just felt disrespectful, and I know a lot of people felt the same way, which is why when one movie in 2001 that didn't remove the Twin Towers, and that was the Michael Douglas film Don't Say a Word, and I am aware that when the Twin Towers on screen, people applauded. Because something tragic happened doesn't mean you have to change it or take it away, and it's actually worth watching just for the fact that they literally built a scale model of the Twin Towers for the Kong character to climb, and you get to see the Twin Towers in their glory as they were back in the day, and you know what, that's beautiful. Kong, on the other hand, is not beautiful, and I won't ever get the image of him fingering and blowing on Jessica Lange out of my head, ever. So, on a lighter note, I'm planning to do one more Jeff film, and it will be a Jeffrey Combs film. And he's got so much to go with. Like Jeffrey Jones, I probably will come back to the Jeffs at some other point, but that will be the last Jeffrey movie for a little while. So tune in next week for a Jeffrey Combs film. Probably one you've never heard of, but I grew up watching as a kid and it was disturbing, and I'll talk about that next week. So go see this if you want. If you don't want, if you didn't like King Kong 2005, you might enjoy this one just for the overacting and the hilarity of it's just weird. Just watch it for Charles Grodin. Jeff Bridges, he's he's there, but he's really not there. And remember what I say every week, folks. Hit that subscribe button. Comment down below. Give a thumbs up. But no, really, what I do say every week is be careful what you watch. There's a lot of dodgy films out there. Bye.